Welcome back, Queen, to another episode of Creatress of Freedom. I am Annie, I am your host, and I'm so happy that you are here with me and we get to have this beautiful conversation today. If you are new, welcome! It's so awesome to have you here, and if you're an OG, welcome back, babe. I love having you here. Oh, today's episode, I want to go in and talk a little bit around growth and up leveling and friendships and people that might need to be let go of. And I want to share with you some personal experiences and then also what I am seeing inside my community as well today. So let's delve into it straight up. Here we go. All right. So I want to talk today about how, when we're on a journey of growth, of evolution, we are often faced with challenges, right? And I mean, that's just what happens. If you've been on this journey for a while, you will have experienced this many times. I know that I have experienced this many times. And often what can happen is we are asked to let go or reevaluate the people that might be in our life. And so I want to share with you a vulnerable story around a friendship that I had to let go of a few months back now. But, this is not the first one that's had to happen either. I've had to have these hard conversations quite a few times, and they're not easy to have, and they don't get easier the more that you keep having them. But I think you catch it a lot quicker than what you would normally catch it. And so what I was noticing was with a particular friend that I was hanging around and, spending quite a fair bit of time and energy on, was how I was feeling with this particular person. And, what it came down to, and what I discovered for myself, was that I felt like I couldn't actually be myself, right? And when we can't be ourselves and be our authentic self, then that actually blocks our magnetism. Yeah. And if we're interested in creating a big life where we attract all of our desires and we attract everything into our life, well, we need to be magnetized for that, right? We need to become a magnet. And when we have things that are in the way that are blocking that, that's going to stop that from coming into your life. And so I sat with this for a little while, and for a few months I really was just sitting in the passenger seat and just really observing the interaction that I was having with this particular friend. And like, she's not a bad friend or anything like that, or a bad person. We're just unaligned. That's it, right? We're on different journeys. I want different things. She's different where she's at, and that's okay. And I don't think that this is talked about enough in the evolution phase, right? Like, people say, yeah, you have to let go of people that won't come on the journey with you. But yeah, cool. But do you actually hear of anybody that's actually walked through that and what that looks like and how hard that is and how it really hurts on your heart? And, you don't want to hurt other people intentionally, but when you're having those kind of conversations, naturally that other person is going to get hurt. And so I wanted to share with this with you today, because I want to share with you how I navigated and how I worked through it, and then how I had that conversation, because I don't believe that this stuff is talked about enough. And we need to start having more of these conversations, because I shared it with him inside my community. And a lot of the women, when I said, when you start to feel like there's a misalignment with your friends, what do you do? And a lot of the women were like, oh, I just kind of like distance myself, or I just ghost them, and, we just kind of like drift away. And I was like, interesting. And I think that they're not alone. I think that this happens a lot. And I think that I also used to be this type of person too, where you just kind of slowly distance yourself from people, and, the friendship kind of fizzles out, and no one really knows what happened or where they stood, or was something said, or did someone get their feelings hurt and no one talked about it. And, no one really knows what happened. And when we do that, that creates wounds for not only us, but also for the other people as well in our life. And if you're a part of the consciousness that's raising awareness, then this starts with us, right? And this starts with us being able to have these hard conversations with the person that you feel is no longer in alignment with the direction that you're heading in. And how they choose to perceive it, how they choose to take it, that's on them, right? That's not on you, that's on them. And we have to hold firm in love and hold firm that we are doing what's right for us and that it is going to hurt and upset the other person. And that's part of the grief, right? It's part of the process, and it's part of what we have to allow ourselves to feel as well with the journey. And so with this particular friend, I really just, like I said, I really sat in the passenger seat and was observing. And, I noticed just little comments that, were often made, and I could see that it was all happening on a subconscious level for her, but there was a little bit of belittling that was going on. And, the first time it was funny, but then after that it was kind of not funny because it kept kind of being said every time. And, it was things like, oh, that's because you're so perfect. Or, it was like, oh yeah, well, that's because everything goes right in your life, doesn't it? And the first time when those things are said, you can kind of laugh them off, but when those things keep constantly being said to you, you kind of think, oh, that feels off. That feels weird. Like my body's not really receiving what you're saying, and it doesn't no longer feel like a joke anymore. And I understand that it was from a subconscious level on her behalf, right? Like I don't think that she was necessarily conscious and aware of the things that she was saying, and I don't think she was intentionally trying to hurt me either. But I just started to really observe. And then I started to observe the way that she would interact with other people. And I don't know if I really agreed with some of her behaviors in the way that she would talk to people, the way that she would treat people. And I started to think, I don't know if this friendship is really in alignment with, the type of people that I want to have in my life. And so I sat and I reflected, because I also know I've been on this journey long enough that this can also teach me things about myself. And so I sat with that and I leant into that, and I thought, like, what is this teaching me about me? Like, is there anything here? Is there any sticky residue? Is there any wounding that's coming up for me that I get to work through and I get to kind of navigate and I get to heal? And so I did that, and I sat through that process, and I was like, what is this teaching me? Like, if this person really isn't in alignment with the type of women and the type of people that I want to call into my life, why am I allowing this? And how did I become a match for it, right? Because that's the other aspect, is like we attract the people into our life because of who we are, right? Like if there's someone in your life and you're like, you don't like them, or you don't feel like they really are supportive of you, like remember that you became a match for that person at some point, right? So how did you allow that person to come into your field? Because they wouldn't come into your field if you were not a match for them. That's the law of attraction, right? That's how that works. And so I sat with this and I was like, what is this? Like, what's the mirror here? What is the mirror between the two of us? And, I found myself, when different scenarios were happening, I found myself buying into the spiral that she was in. And that was, sometimes it was quite a toxic spiral. And I think that we triggered each other in different areas. And I think that there was a part of me that was really trying to navigate, like, what was my wounding and what was her wounding. And I think that there was different parts of our story that almost created a little bit of a trauma bond between us. We had similar upbringings in the sense of, like, we didn't really fit in with our parents, and we were kind of, we had to kind of fend for ourselves. And so I think that there was a part of us that, bonded over that, because a lot of our conversations were always around that. But I have done a lot of healing around my parents' situation and, being disowned and being abandoned and, getting out the other side of that. And so that's no longer really I don't really hold what's the word I'm looking for? I don't really hold the wounding around it, right? But I think because our conversation and our friendship, it kind of started off with that. So there was this mutual ground of a little bit of trauma bonding, I think, looking back now at the situation. And so I just decided to start to pull away a little bit. And I started to see perhaps that there was some codependency on both of our behalves. And for me, what I realized was that even though I felt like this person wasn't really in alignment with the type of friendships that I desired to have in my life, I think there was a part of me that really felt lonely when it comes to sisterhood. And being here in Greece, I'm still navigating, trying to find my tribe, and being on an island, a lot of people come and go. And so it is a little tricky. And maybe this is a story that I'm telling myself as well, but I'm very aware of it. That, it's hard to build those deeper connections. And so this was like the first person that I really started to have that deeper connection with, that wasn't leaving, that was actually staying on the island. And so I think what I discovered, well, I know what I discovered, was that there was a part of me that felt like I was not going to be able to find any other kind of sisterhood connections. And so it was kind of like, well, let's just keep this one in my field and in my space, because it's fulfilling some kind of need for me right now, even though I know that it's not for my highest good. And so I think at the root of that, what that comes down to is worthiness, right? And, if you've been following my stories on Instagram and things like that, you will see that that has been a bit of a theme that has come up for me recently when I was in America, right? It was this worthiness theme that was coming up. And so that's really what comes, is like, do I think that I'm worthy to find, women that are in business, women that are on a spiritual journey, women that are healing, women that aren't going to, become defensive when you're trying to pull them up instead of drag them down, and, women that are open to hearing different perspectives, and, all of those kinds of things. And so I think there's a part of me that felt like maybe I'm just not worthy to find that. But as I kept allowing this person in my life, I started to notice how it was impacting other areas of my life, like my sleep. I noticed, I wasn't so motivated for my business anymore. I felt distracted by this person where, my business almost became a nuisance, right? Because, if we'd want to hang out or whatever, and, maybe I'd have a work call, and then, she'd be like, oh, do you really have to do the work call? And then, once upon a time I'd be like, no, like these are my boundaries. But I found it hard to uphold the boundaries because I felt guilty about, spending time with her, but then also knowing that I had a business and a work call, and, with calls with my mentor, never calls with my clients, but calls with my mentor, I found that I was just missing and skipping because we had planned to hang out. And so I started to realize that all of a sudden my priorities were shifting, and I didn't like that. I didn't want my priorities to shift that way when I have this mission and these goals that I want to achieve, and doing that is not heading, on the higher path. It's not serving my highest good. So I really became super observant of everything that was happening. And then I started to distance myself, and I started to pull away a little bit, and I really navigated what that looked like. So the journal came out, the card pulling came out, the sitting in meditation, like, what is this teaching me? What am I learning about myself? What wounds are showing up for me? And the other thing that I also noticed was that there were similar traits and similar qualities that I actually was allowing in this friendship that I also was allowing in my intimate relationship with my ex. And so it was almost like the universe, once again, is testing me, because if that was in a man, I would have picked up on it really fast, right? I know what I deserve when it comes to a man, and I know how I want to be treated. But with a woman, it was almost like I was justifying it because it was a woman, right? And I think we all have sisterhood wounds that run really deep. And so, we desire to fit in, we desire to be accepted, we desire to be seen. And so it's almost like I was putting the blinkers on to some of those things that, in a man, I probably would have ended the connection a long time before what I did. And so that was really interesting to sit and navigate and watch as well. It was like, oh shit, like because this is a woman, I am allowing a lot of things that I probably wouldn't allow if it was a man. So that was also really interesting to navigate too. So I sat with my journal and I really like worked out like what it was. And then I had another friend that came and we spent like 10 days together, and it was like full on for the 10 days. She stayed with me, and I really started to notice how I felt between this one friendship that I had and this other friendship with this woman that came and stayed with me. And like there was not even a comparison, right? There was no comparison. Like my friend that came and stayed for the 10 days, like there was deep mutual respect between us. We both were very considerate of each other's feelings. There was a deep love between us, and the relationship and the friendship was just different. It was just different. But I noticed how I felt, right? And that was the biggest thing. Like I felt uplifted. I felt inspired. I felt like I had energy. Whereas this other friendship, I was feeling drained. I was feeling exhausted. After we'd hung out, it was taking me a couple of days to re-raise my vibration again. And so I really started to notice like the comparison between the two. And I'm not comparing, I just want to say, I'm not comparing the two women because everyone's an individual. I'm comparing how I felt around people. Okay. So I just want to clear that up. And so I really was like, okay, I've decided that this friendship does need to end because it's not actually serving my highest good. And it's also creating blockages in other areas of my life where I want to receive abundance, right? And I know how law of attraction works. So sometimes law of attraction means that we have to have really fucking hard conversations. And so I actually got a message from her, and she was like, hey, can we chat about feelings? I really want to catch up with you. There's some things I want to talk about. And I was like, hey, yes, I also want to chat about feelings too. So let's have a conversation. So we met up and we had a conversation, and she shared with me how she felt like I had really distanced myself from her, and how she felt technically abandoned by me, and how she felt like I was just waiting around until my other friend arrived. And now that my friend was here, she felt used. And, she was sharing different things as well around, how she felt like she always over complimented me when we were in situations with other people, but yet she felt like I brushed her off. And, there was a lot of things that were coming up for her. And I know how hard that conversation would have been for her to have. And so I just sat and I listened. And then I also shared as well my point of view too. And I said, I really appreciate you opening up and, being really vulnerable. And I know that these conversations are not easy to have. And, this is not easy for me to also have. But, I respect that we're having this conversation. And she's like, I really cherish you as a friend, and, I want to be able to maintain our friendship, but it's important for me to express to you how I'm feeling. And, I really genuinely appreciated that. And there was a part of me that was like, oh my gosh, like I feel the opposite, right? And it's like in a relationship, like when you're starting to date someone and you like really like that person, but they don't feel the same. And it's like, oh, like, that's kind of how it was feeling. And I was like, oh, like, she has a different idea of how this is going to go today. And this is not the way that I want it to go. Like, I really want to create some distance, and I'm not really sure that this is serving my highest good. And so it was really hard to have this conversation. And I knew just from our previous interactions, I knew that she would be really upset, and I knew that she would be somewhat triggered by, some of the things that I was going to share with her, because I also knew some of her past. We'd shared bits and pieces of our past with each other. And so I knew I do this work for a living, right? I coach women through all of this stuff. So I knew how it was going to be received on the other end. But, the thing that I've learned is that I refuse to self-abandon myself in order to protect somebody's feelings. And there's a way that you can go about it by staying in love and having this conversation, knowing that that person's still going to be hurt and upset. But at the end of the day, that person's feelings is not your responsibility. You shouldn't be dimming your light in order to make sure that you're not upsetting this other person. And that was how I was kind of feeling in our friendship. It felt like I was constantly watching myself and not, sharing my big wins or sharing things that were happening in my life, because I felt like it was a bit of a trigger for her. And I felt like she wasn't necessarily always super happy for different milestones that I had achieved. And so I vulnerably shared with her how I was feeling. And, if you know someone that you need to have this conversation with, then I would highly recommend this kind of this framework, this formula to work through. Because it is, these conversations are really hard to have. And, my heart was racing, my hands were shaking. We'd ordered lunch, but I wasn't really sure that I wanted to eat lunch. And I knew that she was potentially going to get upset. We were also in a public setting as well. And so I wasn't sure how that was going to be. But at the end of the day, we cannot control what somebody else is going to do. All we can control is the way that we react and the way that we show up. That's it. That's all we have control over. And so I just kept reminding myself of that, of all I have control over is me. That's it. I don't have control over anybody else. And so I shared with her, how I lately have really been feeling into our friendship. And, what I've realized is that after we've hung out together, I don't feel great. And it takes me a couple of days to, feel back to my normal self. And I feel like when we are together that I can't be my authentic self, because I'm constantly making sure that she's okay and that she's, not triggered or isn't feeling hurt or upset. And so I feel like I'm kind of walking on eggshells a little bit. And, I think that we were just at two different parts of our journey, and she was on a very, very deep, 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 deep healing journey as well. And she was navigating a lot of trauma and things like that. And so I said to her, I can't be the friend that you need me to be. I don't have the capacity to be able to be the friend that you need me to be. And so when you are having this conversation, it's really important to always come back to you and not pinpoint what they're doing or, things like that. Really staying with the I statements of this is how I'm feeling. This is what's happening for me, because no one can take that away from you. But the minute that you start to pinpoint and you start to, judge the other person essentially in the conversation that you're having with them, they're going to get very defensive, because it's human nature for everyone to state their case, right? No one wants to feel like they're the problem, right? No one wants to feel that they're the one that is hurting or upsetting you. And so just when you are having this conversation, that's why I spent so much time really just sitting in my own space and figuring out how I was feeling and eliminating anything that she was doing or anything that she was saying, and actually tuning into how I was feeling. And then I could come from that space and have that conversation with the things that I was feeling and navigating for myself. And so that was kind of how I went about it. And I said, it's really hard for me to say this because I don't want to hurt you. But I do want to take a break from this friendship, because it doesn't feel like it is for my highest good. And naturally, she was super upset by the conversation that we were having. And, when people are hurt, they tend to want to hurt people back. And so she was saying some not nice things, but, I can hold the love and the gratitude, because I know that she doesn't necessarily mean those things that she was saying. She was just saying them from a hurt place, right? She's when you understand trauma, you can have these conversations and you can almost imagine that this person that's in front of you is not the person that's in front of you. It's the affected person that had the trauma. So that maybe that's a younger version of them, and you can really start to hold a lot of compassion for them. I'm not saying that it makes it right by the way that the person treats you, but like I said, we can't control how somebody else is going to react. We can just control the way that we are. And so as long as we come from a place of love and love only, we're going to be able to walk away from this conversation knowing that we were in the highest frequency that we possibly could have been in, and we can send love to the person that's hurting and navigating what it is that they're also dealing with, and what their process is as well. And so it was a really hard conversation to have. And, I'm sad that we weren't able to, kind of see eye to eye. I mean, I know that she was very hurt by it. My intention was definitely not to hurt her at all. I just made a promise to myself with my last relationship that I abandoned myself so much. And when we abandon ourselves, oh my God, does it take a long time to get back to trusting yourself, to loving yourself, to honoring yourself, to setting those boundaries. It takes a really long time. It takes a lot of work to get there. And so when you start to recognize those old patterns and old behaviors of, oh shit, I'm self-abandoning here, you catch it pretty quick, because you know how long it took you to get back to yourself. And so as hard as that conversation was to have with her, I also knew that I couldn't self-abandon, and I won't self-abandon. It's too hard to get back to loving yourself again. And so, yes, it was hard to have the conversation, but I'm super grateful that I, number one, was able to have that conversation. And I acknowledged to her that, yes, I have distanced myself, and, maybe I should have communicated that with her earlier. And, she was saying things like, as a coach, I thought you would know better. And, it was little digs like that I understand that she was hurting, and that's what happens. Hurt people. And like I said, it doesn't make it right or wrong, but we can stay from love. And as long as you are doing what's true for you, and you're following your own compass, and you're listening to your heart, you'll never be off path. And, we were able to, at the end, say, that we're thankful for the time that we have been able to spend together. And, that we had heaps of fun, but for right now, like, this is where we're at. And yeah, she got up and she walked away, and she was super upset. And I kind of just sat there and started my grieving process, because, you are, when you're saying goodbye to people that you love, like I love her as a person, and I wish her well. And I hope that, she goes on a beautiful self-discovery journey and all of that. But it's just not what I have the capacity in my life right now to be able to take on. And so that grieving process is hard, because then you have to feel your feelings, right? You have to let go of parts of yourself and parts of the relationship that you put time and energy into. And no one wants to go through that part. Like, no one wants to go through the grieving part, because it's messy and it's emotional and it's sad, and you're feeling all of the feelings, and no one wants to do that. We want to just move on with life. But I also know that that's also a really crucial part in order to step into the next person that you're becoming, right? We have to allow time and space for the grieving, for the identity shifts, for the falling aways, in order to rise into the next level, the next version that we are stepping into. So if you are listening to this conversation and you're like, oh shit, there's some conversations I think I need to have, like, I hope that this has been really supportive for you to really honor yourself and hold love. You know that you are growing when you can sit there and you can take someone that's hurting, their comments and their statements that they're saying, and you can kind of let them come and then hit your field and bounce out and not actually penetrate into your heart. Oh man, you know that you're growing when you can do that. And so I really invite you to, step into this level that you really want to step into. If you are asking for a new level and a new lot of abundance into your life, then you may need to let go of something in order to make space for that. And maybe that is physical things, physical items. Maybe that's people. Maybe that's belief systems. Whatever it is, you will know what it is. And I trust you and I empower you to sit with that and find out what that is that you are needing to let go of. Because at every milestone that you see me reach, there has been some form of letting go of, right? Like the next level does not come without letting go of something, because we have to make space for it. So if this is a conversation that you need to have, or you need support in navigating it, or you're just not sure how to go about it, then please reach out to me and I would love to support you. I've had to have these conversations quite a few times because I'm constantly growing and I'm constantly evolving. And, I really pride myself in being able to actually have the conversation and not ghost the person as well. I think it's a disrespect to the person if you just ghost them. I think if they've been a big part of your life, I think that it's a conversation that does need to be had. And, it's part of the healing process for both of you and you can both learn from it. So I hope that this has been a really supportive conversation for you. And if you do need support in any area, you'll have a look in the show notes and you'll see different ways that we can connect. But just know that if you have a big mission and you have a purpose that you are chasing and you're going after, then know that it's going to come with some hard conversations and some challenges alongside it. I'm sending you so much love today, no matter what it is that you're navigating. I love you. Thank you for doing this work. And I will chat with you real soon. Bye for now.